Coming up on this edition of the Next Man Up podcast, D-Man and I are going to talk Browns front office. We're going to talk Browns head coach. Did they get it right? Are they still the laughing stock of the NFL? Is this finally going to all come together via the Ivy League? We get into that. And, of course, we've got to give our thoughts on the passing, the shocking, tragic death of Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and 7 others in that helicopter crash. We'll get into all of that and more today here on the Next Man Up podcast. Welcome to the Next Man Up podcast. I'm Kenny Rhoda. My partner is Dennis Maniloff, and we're coming to you via the Press Play Podcast Network with our executive producer, Chase Smith, turning all the dials so you can hear us. And D-Man, it's been a while since we've chatted. A lot has happened. In fact, the last time we talked was right after the firing of Freddie Kitchens with the Cleveland Browns. And since then, they've hired Kevin Stefanski as their new head coach. They've hired Andrew Berry as their new general manager. So where do you want to start with that, brother?
I'm going to start with this. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear RoadMan. Happy birthday to you. Birthday today, man, for the RoadMan as we tape. We both been slammed these last couple of weeks, but it's appropriate that we get back into the Chase Smith saddle on your birthday, so that's exciting. The last time we spoke, Kitchens was gone, and rightly so. It's one of those times where you applaud Jimmy Haslam for his lack of continuity, and you say, thank you, Jimmy, for moving on from Freddie, because he was underwater basically the entire season. RoadMan was onto him from the jump. It took me a while longer to finally cave, but the smart move there. Then the question is, who do you hire? Whom do you hire?
Well, also, D-Man, you know what we forgot, and we haven't had time to talk. John Dorsey gets fired right after, Freddie. They want to reduce John Dorsey's role and make him a yes man to Paul DePodesta, and Dorsey, the football guy, wanted nothing to do with the guy that I now like to call Polyanalytics. Polyanalytics' voice won out, and Dorsey gets canned, and then that leads them down the path to what they did with Stefanski and then Andrew Berry officially today.
Yeah, thank you for the chronological reset. Dorsey came after Kitchens in very short order. What was it, Sunday night Kitchens, and then Tuesday Dorsey, I believe it was.
Right.
It makes sense. I mean, John Dorsey's, he's got pride and he believes in himself, and he's not going to sit there and take a back seat in an organization. So I understood, if he was being told you got a new role and it's certainly not a promotion or a status quo, you're actually going to be demoted. I don't blame Dorsey for saying, hey, let's part company here. Was I shocked? Not necessarily, because number one, clearly Dorsey had hitched his wagon to Kitchens, and Kitchens was such a disaster that it was held against John Dorsey that Kitchens flamed out like he did. And number two, clearly Paulie Analytics, as you say, Paul DePodesta had Haslam's ear. And when that was the case, you figured that it was going to be difficult for Dorsey to remain once Kitchens was blown out. So not really all that shocked that once Kitchens went and that was Dorsey's guy, that Dorsey would either be reassigned or decide to leave, and he decided to leave. So that was a couple of days after Kitchens, and then what was next in line? Next was Stefanski. The coaching search. You obviously are very familiar with the McDaniels family, and so I'm sure you were locked on to Josh McDaniels and probably figured that if he was going to come in, he was going to have a, more than a puncher's chance to be the guy. So I thought so too, quite honestly. I knew that Stefanski was a favorite of DePodesta's from last year and had been pinched by Kitchens in the final analysis. So Stefanski was always out there, but I believed that once McDaniels came in for that day-long visit / interview, that was going to be it. That Jimmy Haslam was going to say, hey, this is my guy. This is the guy I've been locked on to. And Paul, with all due respect, I'm the owner here, and my choice goes. So, Roadman, what was your thought when McDaniels left the Berea facility without a deal? Did you think once that happened, he was not going to sign as head coach?
I wasn't 100% sure, but I didn't think it was a good sign. And then in talking with some people, he did not withdraw his name as he had done once before. What was it, 07 or 09, whenever that was with Mangini, right? I think, DMan. So I was a little concerned, and then I got more concerned as the next couple of days went by, right? And then I got word that there was no way he was getting the job because he wanted to come in and have sweeping changes throughout the front office and basically, run it the way he wanted to in a Belichickian way. And that scared the you-know-what out of Jimmy Haslam, from what I was told. And Paul DePodesta got in his ear and probably, put those scary thoughts in Jimmy's head. And so they didn't want to go through the sweeping changes. Paul DePodesta won out there. He told Jimmy last year, you should have hired my guy Stefanski. Instead, you went with whoop-de-hell, and that didn't work out. Now, I'm telling you again, Stefanski's better than McDaniels. And look, he wants to come in here and make all these changes. We don't need to make these changes, yada, yada, yada. And so McDaniels gone, Stefanski in. And I'll get to this a little later. I think it was all a dog and pony show the whole time, D-Man. They wanted Stefanski. They wanted Barry. And lo and behold, after however many weeks, those are the two that ended up getting the jobs. And I think they maybe just dragged this out to make it look like they cared about the other candidates. That's just my gut feeling.
I hear you. I hear you, Kenny, because here's why I didn't think that when it was all done, that McDaniels was going to land in Cleveland. Because if he did come to Cleveland, as you said, he was bringing his paradigm with him, okay?
Yep.
His top down with him. Well, guess who's on the outs in that case?
Right.
Paul DePodesta.
Yep.
And yet Paul DePodesta was part of the search committee. So what self-respecting member of a search committee is going to recommend the hire of someone who's going to get rid of him or at least render him moot and send him to, keep him in California for good? So it never made sense to me that Paul DePodesta would sign off on Josh McDaniels, because McDaniels' new alignment was not going to include him. So yeah. I agree with you that I think ultimately Stefanski was the guy. They wanted to go through with McDaniels. They wanted to hear him out. They felt like, I'm sure maybe that was even a favor that the owner gave to himself. Maybe Jimmy Haslam said, hey, I've always liked Josh McDaniels. I want to give him a fair shake interview at the very least, right. Even though we're leaning towards Stefanski here. Let's bring him in. And, the fact that he was in the facility for 7-8 hours is something to behold. I mean, I don't know what was going on in there.
You know what I heard, D-Man? I heard it was almost embarrassing with the football knowledge he was dropping, and nobody understood it, from JW, the son-in-law, Coop, the lawyer, Paulie Analytics, and Jimmy Haslam. It got to a point where I was told they stopped him and took him on a tour of the building because they didn't understand half the crap he was talking about because it was too football related.
Yeah, well, I guess we can't. I guess that means we don't get Tom Brady in his free agent year of 2020. So we're a little sad there. But I think that it was an odd day in retrospect. Now that we know that Stefanski was hired, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that entire interview process, or the entire day that McDaniels was in Berea.
Yeah.
And here's, again, you can imagine the search committee says, okay, Josh, what do you want to do? Well, I want this guy as the president. I want this guy as the GM. I want this guy as the personnel director. On second thought, Josh, when's your flight out of here? So it makes sense that they moved on from him, even though he was a guy that a lot of people were interested in. I was in favor of it from the standpoint that I wouldn't have minded the Patriot way, an attempt at a full-blown Patriot way on the North Coast, meaning not just McDaniels, but front office people and coaches as well, other assistants. I wanted to see if the Patriot way could work at full blast, because since 99, there had been two sort of dabbles into the Patriot way, Cornell and Mangini, and they didn't work. So at least this way, it was going to be seemingly all in. Right. But the counter to that, and this is where, I can understand passing on Josh McDaniels for several reasons. Number one, it didn't work out in Denver. Okay, but still, you say that's a hiccup, but it's a mark against him. Number two, the Indianapolis fiasco, even though there's probably a story behind it that we're not sure of, it didn't look good. It still resonates to this day that it wasn't really good that McDaniels left Indianapolis in the state that he did.
Right.
You also had the case of the Giants where, here comes the Judge, becomes the coach of the Giants. Oh, by the way, Judge is an assistant under Belichick, but he's not named McDaniels. The Giants fell so in love with Judge that they said no thank you to McDaniels. So you're going, what's that all about? And then the other part of it is, you weren't going to have Brady. I was just joking about Brady coming to Cleveland, but you weren't going to have Brady and you weren't going to have Belichick. So how good is McDaniels away from Brady and Belichick? There's reason to wonder. So I could see the counterpoint to McDaniels, but once he was out of the mix, then it was almost certain that Stefanski was going to be the guy.
All right, so what do you think of Stefanski? He's 37. He's never been a head coach before at any level. He was the OC for the Vikings last year. They made the playoffs, won a playoff game. Well, I really think the Saints lost that playoff game more than the Vikings won that play. But still, give him credit for it. Cousins had a nice year and everything like that. So what do you think of Stefanski?
I think he's an extremely smart man. I wouldn't want to sit with him and take an SAT test or an ACT. So he's obviously bright. The ladies like him, or so I hear. The GQ element to him. He carries a beard very well. The reason I'm hesitating to dive in is because, I said that I wasn't going to do this given that I'd been burned so many times. I'd fallen for the banana in the tailpipe so many times, as in the coaching A-plus presser, all the way up to if you don't wear brown and orange, you don't matter. Yeah, let's go get them. Right. I fell for Freddie, hook, line, and sinker, and the whole deal with the whatever it was, the hoodie or the sweater that he was wearing.
You were jumping out of that plane with a parachute.
Exactly. So I finally said, you know what? Enough. It's show me, don't tell me with the next Browns coach.
Okay.
I'm not going to fall for the presser. I'm not going to praise the guy to the hilt and say, oh, what he said was so eloquent, so pithy. But honestly, I did listen to the presser. I was impressed by it. But again, I'm looking for Stefanski to win games. I don't care what he sounds like, what he looks like. How smart he is. As long as he wins games, that's
all right. Are you buying, let me interrupt, are you buying what he said in that presser, where it doesn't matter to him who calls plays? If he can find somebody to call plays, he'll do that. He doesn't have to call plays. I'm not buying it. That's just me, aggressive gambler, Mr. Vegas, Dewey Oxberger. Sorry.
Right now, I'm probably 30% buy, 70% sell. Okay. I think he said it because he, again, is a smart man, and he was aware of what had happened in the Freddie Kitchens case, where they clearly hired him because of his ability to call plays, or so they thought.
Right.
And Kitchens dug in all the way to the end, even when he was offered a lifeline or asked, are you going to turn the play calling against Cincy in week 17 over to Monken? Oh, heck no. So he went down with the ship. He's like, I'm going to call plays all year. I don't care what anybody says. I think that Stefanski knew how it had gone down with Kitchens and the Browns, and he said, I'm not going to be stubborn in my presser, and I'm not going to say, oh, heck yeah, I'm calling the plays. But ultimately, I think it's going to come out the way you and I suspect it will, which is Stefanski's going to say, hey, you guys hired me because, or you hired me as an offensive coordinator of the Vikings.
Right.
I know what I'm doing. I know how to call plays and do some other things in the headset as well. So I think ultimately Stefanski will be calling the plays. That doesn't mean that he won't hire, somebody who's more than a quality control coach. But it doesn't mean he won't hire an OC. But here's the key. The OC that Stefanski hires has got to fit with his philosophy. Unlike Monken to Kitchens. Monken and Kitchens clearly were not on the same page when it came to how to run an offense and what to call and what to do. Stefanski, when he does hire an OC, which, again, you and I think will not be calling the plays, this OC is going to have to be on the same wavelength as Stefanski so that this OC who, works on the game plan with him is thinking of a like mind.
Right. The word alignment, right? That's the buzzword with Jimmy Haslam and this search committee and the front office now. Everything's got to align. And for them, whether it's right or wrong, we don't know, but everything's aligning the way they wanted it to. It's the Ivy League connection, 2 Harvard guys and a Penn guy, in charge of the Cleveland Browns. And that takes us to the general manager, the youngest in the NFL at age 32. Andrew Berry is welcomed back to Cleveland. And let me just paint the picture for you, D-Man, all right? So here's who's running Jimmy Haslam's football team, okay? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
A first-time ever head coach at any level with 1 year's experience as an OC at the NFL level in 37-year-old Kevin Stefanski. A first-time ever general manager who is now the youngest GM in the NFL at age 32. And, oh, yeah, he was part of the front office when you had the worst 2-year stretch in Cleveland Browns history going 1-31, Andrew Berry, and a lifetime baseball analytics guy who never was part of an organization that won a title in Major League Baseball, and prior to hiring him with the Browns had never had any NFL experience before. He is now your lead voice in the front office. And, oh, yeah, he was part of that 1-31 team, the 2 worst years in franchise history. Those are the 3 guys in charge of running Jimmy Haslam's football team. Good luck, JH3.
Why are you doing this to me, especially on your birthday, RoadMan? You're putting me in a bad mood.
I'm sorry. Hey, the truth hurts, man.
Yeah, I don't blame you for illustrating the point and spelling it out the way you did. I mean, it's okay, in my opinion, to be cynical as you analyze the Cleveland Browns because Jimmy Haslam's Browns have invited it.
Yep.
Jimmy Haslam's Browns have invited cynicism, have invited sneers, snickers, laughter, jokes, and there's really nothing that Haslam can say about it if he's being honest, other than, yeah, you guys are right. This has been a complete dumpster fire since I've been the owner of the team, even though I'm making money hand over fist based on the valuation of the franchise. But, Haslam is in a situation where anything he does is mockable until and unless he wins.
Right.
So therefore, you can look at this all Ivy League trio and say, okay, it looks kind of odd to me. I mean, yeah, they're brainiacs, but they're trying to tackle the NFL. I'm going to wait and see on these guys. And you have every right to do that. You have every right to be pessimistic, if you will. Doesn't mean you can't tune in or you give them the benefit of the doubt here and there, but you have a right to go, gee, really? I mean, okay, I guess everything else has failed to this point. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I do think Andrew Berry gets a little bit of a bad rap. I think he got swept up under that, avalanche of rebuild / Hugh, and who knows how domineering Hugh was in that building, and
Sashi Brown.
And Brown. So I'm not saying that, Berry is unhooked from it completely. I just think that I'm willing to give Andrew Berry a fresh start in his new role, as GM, as opposed to player personnel director back then when they were clearly in a full-blown rebuild.
Do you think they hired two yes men, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, two guys that would align with them and agree with what they were doing, and that's why McDaniels and Payton didn't get the jobs, because they weren't going to be yes guys?
I think that's part of it, but here's the thing. I do believe that Andrew Berry is not the general manager of the Browns if George Payton does not say no. If George Payton says I'm in, then I believe that Payton is coming here as general manager, and he and Stefanski are in alignment together, and therefore Berry's not here. So you can't automatically say they just hired Berry because he's a yes man.
Well, here's what I'll counter that with. I think they had two interviews with him. Okay, they wanted to hear what he had to say, but they wanted Berry all along. So I think through those two interviews, they put enough in his head to present doubt to himself that he could work with them. In other words, they planted seeds where he would say no, and it looks like, okay, we interviewed him, it looked good, he didn't want the job, so we're going to go back to Andrew Berry. I think that's the way this went about. That's just me. Like I said, I don't believe in Jimmy Haslam at all, and so I think all along they wanted Stefanski and Berry. They brought everybody else in and listened to him to make it look good, but planted enough seeds to say, look, this is how we're going to do it. If you want this job, you have to acquiesce to this. And both McDaniels and Payton said, no, thank you.
Again, I would agree with you to a point, but it sure seemed to me like Stefanski and Payton fit like a glove, and that they were going to be simpatico.
I wanted Payton. He worked under Rick Spielman, and of course down our way at WHBC in Canton, the Spielman name, is like God when you talk about football. And he was working under an experienced general manager who was having success and had, if you're talking about alignment, had a relationship with Stefanski. So I wanted Payton over Andrew Berry.
Yeah. And so I think it was I wouldn't say a blow, I guess. If they were already thinking Berry, they probably didn't consider it a blow. But right. I thought when the news came down that Payton said no thanks, that it was, it was a ding, if you will, to the Browns' armor, and it kind of had to absorb it. But if they were Berry all along, then it really didn't matter for them. But this is. I mean, first of all, what do you do if you're a Browns fan? What choice do you have? Okay, because you can't force the owner to sell. He's not going to sell. He and D are not going to sell. They're just making way too much cash, and their egos are way too big to walk away. As even with you think about the Dolans, even the Dolan family. People say, "Oh, sell." Why should they sell when the value of the franchise keeps going up by $100 million every year, or so it seems? So if you're the Haslams, you're not selling. Therefore, the Browns fans are saying, well, we're stuck with this ownership. We have no choice but to go along with whatever the ownership plan is.
Right.
At least this way, it looks like you have three guys, Berry, DePodesta, and Stefanski, that can sit in the room and talk the same language at the same speed. They don't need translators with each other. They don't have to have a football thesaurus or anything like that. So at least there's that sort of continuity that you feel like you're going to get out of these three. Whether it's going to translate to an NFL field on a Sunday in September is anybody's guess. And here's a question I have for you, RoadMan.
Right.
You tell me if these guys are still employed with the Browns. I believe they are. Where do Elliott Smith or Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith fit in?
Yeah, great. I have no idea. I heard one somewhere, maybe it was Cleveland Browns Daily or something like that, talking about those two and what are their roles going to be. Let's be honest, it's taken so long to get these two hires that those guys have been doing the work preparing this team for the upcoming draft in which they have the 10th overall pick. So I would think one of the two is probably going to be on board, right? Or if not both, but do both, do they align with, the deep Podesta way? I don't know. That's a great question. My concern with Deep Podesta and Barry DMan is this. And remember, Sashi Brown was the GM. They were working with Sashi Brown back then, right? 2016, 2017 draft. Those two drafts, the Browns drafted 24 players, okay? 24 players. 5 out of the 24 are still on the team. That's it. 5 out of the 24. And to take it a step further, in those two drafts, by trading down the analytics way, right? They passed, and I just wrote down a few players they passed on. Just throw these out there. Carson Wentz, Joey Bosa, Zeke, Jalen Ramsey, Michael Thomas, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Jamal Adams, Marshawn Lattimore. That's what scares the living daylights out of me about the analytics way in football with Paul DePodesta and Andrew Berry, that they were part of that front office with Sashi Brown thinking that way and passed on key cogs, MVPs in the draft that were there for the take.
Yeah, and you wonder, assuming Wolf and Highsmith stay and have, reasonably prominent roles with the organization, albeit not GMs or, presidents of player personnel, anything like that. But, assuming that they stay on with the team, you wonder how those conversations will go and how the quote unquote football guys like Highsmith and Wolf, when they're, championing a player, right, and they hear back from the numbers crunchers that say, no, it doesn't, it's not going to work. But, and ultimately they'd probably get overruled. But I guess we got to give it a chance as long as Wolf and Highsmith remain, and maybe they think they can make it work and they can lend another perspective to the room. And I do also think that we do tend to do this when we analyze the analytics types.
Yep.
You automatically say that a guy like Stefanski, you would think would be adherent to analytics because of his knowledge and his smarts, but he's very much a football guy too. And he understands, football. He's not all wrapped up in numbers. He obviously was coaching or he was OCing for an NFL team. Andrew Berry, played the game. It's not like he just sat in his cubicle his entire life and spit printouts at people. He played the game. So he, I believe he was a stud college player.
Yeah.
In the Ivy League. So
Penn, right? Was he a Penn? Is that where he was?
Well, I thought it was Harvard. I thought Barry was Harvard.
I'm sorry. Okay, Barry's Harvard, Stefanski's Penn. I got to get my Ivy, my Ivy League connections correct now.
And Deep Podesta's Harvard.
For at least the next 2 years until they fire him and we're going through this all over again.
Oh, boy. But anyway, my point is that we often pigeonhole the quote-unquote analytics guys into a corner and say, well, that's all they do. When in fact, Barry worked under some pretty big names, such as Bill Polian, and a guy like Stefanski worked under Mike Zimmer, and Spielman, and all this. So I'm, we'll see. But here's what's fascinating too, is that you're asking, remember how you named the first year elements to this. You're asking these three guys to inherit a team and make a decision on, among others, Odell Beckham Jr.
Right.
How is that going to go over? I can't wait to hear, well, we'll never hear it publicly, but the analysis made by Stefanski, Barry, and DePodesta in the back hallways about OBJ as far as what do the analytics say, because something tells me that alignment isn't going to work quite right.
And what about Kareem Hunt? You wanted to throw that in there, so let's just toss that in there as he's pulled over and for speeding, and then they find marijuana in there, and the cops talking to him like they're buddies and talking Browns out in Rocky River and all that, and Kareem Hunt's basically begging him not to. So that's another guy that they have to take a look at, right?
100%. And I'll take them one at a time. We hadn't spoken until tonight since the national championship game and the fiasco that occurred on the field after the game when OMJ was on full display, slapping money into players' hands, whether it was funny money or real money. Burrow said it was real.
Right.
Doesn't matter. The point is the optics were terrible. He put LSU in a terrible position. And then he doubles down on that foolishness and goes into the locker room after the game, slaps the rear end of a cop or, a security guard, gets himself in hot water there. That eventually, they decided not to pursue charges. But the point is, why in the world was the LSU Clemson game or the post game where LSU won the title? Why was OBJ involved in any way, shape, or form? And yet he somehow managed to worm in there and grab the headlines. And all people were talking about in the aftermath of that glorious season for LSU and the final, the capper, the amazing game against Clemson. And here we are talking about OMJ handshake money and slapping people's rear ends and what are you doing?
Hey, don't forget he grabbed the megaphone from the band guy too.
Yeah, so the megaphone thing. Yeah, what is that? So once again, though, it's no shock. It's OBJ being OMJ. I got to be the center of attention. Here's the thing, OMJ. There are plenty of LSU alums who were thrilled that their Tigers won the national title. Did you see them making idiots of themselves after the game on the field or in the locker room? No, you did not. Okay.
Including Jarvis Landry, who was there with OBJ.
Yeah, I mean, so don't tell me, oh, you guys are making a big deal out of this. And no, it's just the media creation. No, it's you sticking yourself into a story where you don't belong. And sure enough, we have no choice but to talk about it because you did what you did.
Yep.
All right, so there's that. And then you move on to Kareem Hunt. Okay. At least OBJ has never been suspended by the NFL. Kareem Hunt was coming off of a season in 2019 in which he played, let me get this straight, 8 games.
Yep.
Why did he only play 8 games, Kenny and Chase? He played 8 games because he was suspended by the NFL for a variety of transgressions, including punching and kicking a woman. Okay. So you would think that a guy who was forced to play only a half a season because of his detrimental conduct would be angelic the remainder of his career. He wouldn't want to get into anybody's hair or any spotlight. But no, that's not how it works with Kareem Hunt, folks. And we unfortunately saw this with a guy by the name of Josh Gordon. He couldn't stay out of the limelight or out of trouble, as it were, with the NFL. But in the case of Hunt, he gets, I gave him the benefit of the doubt on that. Was it East 4th, the Cleveland situation,
right?
Where he was still suspended at that point, and he had that talk. He talked with the cop out on the street, and they said, "Oh, it's just a misunderstanding." Nothing ever came of it. No charges filed. Okay, fine. I gave him the benefit of the doubt there, but at the time, I said whether not that he cared, not that he was listening. Clearly, wasn't listening, as it turned out. That I'm on the air at number 1100, and I said, Kareem, why, especially while you're on suspension, just lay low. Don't be talking to any cops. Don't get into misunderstanding with anybody. All right, just lay low. Wait till your suspension's over. Guns blazing with the Browns the final 8 games. Earn yourself another contract, even if it's 1 year, and get your footing back in the league. Okay, so I give him the benefit of the doubt there until he gets pulled over by Rocky River Police, and we finally get the dash cam and the audio in the cruiser from TMZ, courtesy of TMZ. And what I heard from Kareem Hunt was troubling on so many levels. Complaining to the cop that he had to go to the airport, as if the cop, is supposed to go, oh, yeah, okay, I pulled you over, but we're here for you, Kareem. And then on and on it goes until the backbreaker to me, which is the policeman alludes to it once and then asks it directly the second time. If the NFL were on site and tested you, would you fail? And he said yes. And then he doubled down on stupid by saying, well, I shouldn't use the word stupid. All right. He doubled down on bizarre.
Right.
When he said, yes, I would. It's the off season. Sorry, I was having a good time.
Yeah.
Kareem, that is your rationale, your justification for what you admitted would have been a failed test when you're on supposedly a zero tolerance policy with the NFL and the Browns. Your rationalization for your behavior is, well, it's the off season. Excuse me for partying. It's basically what he was saying to the policeman. Excuse me for partying. Kareem, you can't do that, dude. You cannot do that. You are not just another player. You're not a guy who hasn't been suspended by the NFL for conduct detrimental. You are walking a very thin line right now between potentially making tens of millions of dollars and making Zippo. You cannot get caught in these types of situations. Even if I'm to believe you that you didn't know anything about the little bits of marijuana that was in your car, and you blamed the backpack on your brother and the open vodka bottle, everybody else is to blame except you. Even if I'm to buy all that, Kareem, why in the world are you entering into a vehicle, let alone driving a vehicle that reeks of marijuana, or so we're told? Clearly, most humans, even I, have never smoked it, never, touched it, but I know what it smells like. You have to know what the smell of marijuana is, Kareem. When you get in that car, you say, you know what? If I get pulled over, I'm in big trouble. And you might want to look at what's in your car before you drive it, because in case you get pulled over, you don't want the policeman going, here's a little bit of marijuana. Here's a backpack with vodka in it. I mean, where is your brain, Kareem? We're talking about your career, your livelihood, your ability to set up your family for many generations, and you're squandering it potentially with this kind of foolishness.
Well, DMan, it's going to be interesting to see how this new front office handles those two players, and how this front office handles the upcoming draft, which is just a few months away. And like I said, they've got the 10th overall pick in that. Real quick, because we've got to talk some Kobe here before we get off the Next Man Up podcast here on the Press Play podcast.
Man, let me jump in with one quick thing, though. One more thing about Kareem. Sorry about the long-winded stuff. But here's the deal. You know how the NFL pops you in the post game if you say something negative about the league?
Yeah.
Well, I heard people saying, all that Kareem Hunt was cited for was speeding that day, and that's true. Okay, he was sent on his way, and all that he got was a speeding ticket. The problem is the NFL going to act on that quote?
Okay.
Because if Kareem Hunt stands in front of microphones after a game and says the NFL is terrible, the refs are terrible, he's getting fined and whatever else. Okay, well, if he's quoted in the back of a cruiser saying he would probably fail a drug test,
right?
You think the NFL is going to take that lying down? I'm not sure they will.
We'll see. Yeah, it's a good point, D-Man. Real quick to summarize the Ivy League connection running the Browns. Are the Browns in better shape today as we tape this Next Man Up podcast than they were the last day of the regular season when they finished 6-10 with Freddie Kitchens as their coach and John Dorsey as their general manager? Are they in better position today?
Yes, and I hate to do this.
Wow.
I hate to dump on one guy so hard, but anybody's better than Kitchens.
Okay, and yeah,
I mean,
and that's
I'm
sad,
sorry.
right? I
It
know.
is.
I'm not disagreeing with you on the coach. I still think Dorsey. They should have kept Dorsey. That's me. I think he's one of the better general. He wasn't perfect, but he produced. He was the general manager of a team that during his time won 13 games over 2 years. And for Browns fans, and this is sad, that's pretty good. Now that's a terrible, way to judge it. But 13 wins over 2 years. When's the last time that's happened with one general manager? So I think they should have kept him. But I agree with you. They're better off that Kitchens is no longer there.
But here's the shame of it. A better coach potentially wins 10 games with this team, and Dorsey's still here as a result. And maybe the Browns get into, the playoffs as a wild card because, the Ravens did go 14-2 in the regular season. So you can't tell
me. How about
me
them though? How about that, D-Man?
Yeah.
I didn't buy it all regular season, and then I gave them credit at the end, and then boom, first time they get in the playoff game, just like last year in the playoff game, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens get knocked out by the Titans. Here's what I'll say real quick about this. I don't care who wins between San Fran and KC. You know why? Because the Ravens and Patriots can't win the damn Super Bowl. And as long as they can't win it, I'm happy. I'm okay. Even though my team's not in it, as long as the Ratbirds and the cheaters from New England don't win, I'm fine.
What bothers me about the Niners Chiefs is that, remember, it wasn't long ago that people were saying the Browns were better than the 49ers. Yeah. And in fact, it was this past offseason that people were saying that. And here the Niners, turn into a juggernaut, and the Browns are 6-10 and firing everybody in sight. So that bothers me. But at the same time, it gives me a little bit of hope because I look at the 49ers, I look at Garoppolo, and I say, well, why can't Mayfield be at least at least as good as, if not better than, Garoppolo, and maybe, the Browns can look at the 49ers for inspiration because of the way they set things up, and Shanahan being the young, the young boy genius, or the very smart guy, and maybe Stefanski can look at Shanahan a little bit. So in one sense, it bothers me the Niners are there, but in the other sense, I see maybe inspiration for the Browns.
And don't forget, Shanahan, of course, was with Cleveland, and he got the hell out of here as fast as he could because he wanted no part of the Haslam PowerPoint presentation.
Please get me out of here.
He got out of here, and he gained experience, even though they lost and blew a 28-3 lead by being an OC in the Super Bowl, and now he's back there as a head coach. So we'll see if it's Andy Reid getting his first Super Bowl win in his second try, or if it's Shanahan matching what his dad did, getting a Super Bowl win there. So, all right. So that's recapping, the Browns off season to this point. D-Man, we've got the new coach, Kevin Stefanski. We've got the new GM, Andrew Berry, and the lead voice in that front office is Paulie Analytics, Paul D. Podesta for Jimmy Haslam. So we'll see as the months, come up to the draft, how this plays out and which direction they go in. We've got to talk, unfortunately, D-Man, about what happened over the weekend. Devastating news. If you're a basketball fan, whether you loved him or you hated him, you respected his game, his 5 titles, his 18 All-Star appearances, his 2 MVP awards in the finals, his 1 regular season MVP, Kobe Bryant at age 41, along with his daughter and 7 others killed in a helicopter crash Sunday in California. And when I heard, my son called me from Brazil, D-Man. I was up. I didn't have anything on, so I didn't know what was going on. My son calls me from Brazil and says, "Did you hear what happened to Kobe?" And I'm like, "No, what?" He goes, "He was killed in a helicopter crash." I'm like, "Come on. Where'd you see that? Is that on the internet? How do you know it's true?" He said, "Well, TMZ reported it, and then Woj just tweeted about it. And if Woj tweets anything about the NBA, you know it's gospel. And I just was kind of in shock. And I've been kind of, Chase said it best when Chase Smith, our executive producer, we've been a prisoner of watching and trying to read everything we can over the last 2 days about this because of how shocking it is and how sad it is for all who were lost in that helicopter crash.
No doubt. And yeah, you're talking about 4 families that were devastated.
Yes.
The Bryant, the Altobelli, the Mauser, and then the pilot as well. And then I think there are actually five families. So terrible, not just Bryant and his daughter, but the reason we're talking about that crash is because of Kobe Bryant,
right,
and his daughter. I unfortunately, one of my passions, I shouldn't say passions, one of my hobbies is I study air crashes of any kind. I'm just one of those people who dives into it. I want to know why crashes occur.
Right.
And, it's easy to say in retrospect, but there's no way that helicopter ever should have gone up in the air. The police were not authorizing their helicopters to fly in that soup. It's pretty clear that the pilot was, in trouble when he was in the fog and he had lost his bearings. He was trying to get above the deck. And, it's regardless. I mean, 9 people died. It doesn't really matter at this point, but it's terrible that decision was made in the first place because lives were, put in jeopardy right away by going into that fog. And so, but yeah, I mean, you talk about Kobe Bryant. Here's the thing. He's one of the all-time greats, no question. And I understand the outpouring of love for this man worldwide. I do. I watched tonight, before we went on the pod, I watched Jerry West continuing to sob.
Yep.
3 days out, he says, I don't think I'll ever get over this.
Yep.
You have very real pain felt across the league, across the world, across everywhere, because Kobe Bryant was an icon, is an icon. He will not be forgotten. However, there's a big however for me. I can't get past what happened in Colorado in 2003 when it comes to Kobe Bryant. In other words, I really wanted to, I said to my wife, Denise, I said, I would have loved Kobe Bryant to the ends of the earth if he had not been accused of a sexual assault in Denver in 2003. That is what stopped me from the full-blown 100% love of Kobe Bryant. And therefore, it's almost like it's a hurdle that I can't clear in my mind. It doesn't mean that I don't, as I said, I don't appreciate all of the outpouring for him and all of the love for him and all of the explanations about what an amazing human he was and what an amazing player he was. It just means that part of his tapestry is something that I know it's convenient to gloss over when he dies, but it prevented me, and I think it prevented some others, from really totally embracing him.
As I look back on that, D-Man, he was never charged, correct? Or what's the way to properly say it?
The allegation was made, and then the
charges were dropped
because the woman refused to testify against him.
Right.
Because it was a classic he said, she said.
Right, exactly. And he swears that it was consensual. He did not say something didn't happen. Obviously it did. He swears it was consensual. She said it wasn't. There was the he said, she said. And the charges were dropped. Now, a lot of people feel she was probably paid off.
Well, then there was this. Well, she was. There was the civil case that was settled with a confidential payment, and so by that alone, he's admitting that something untoward had gone on.
Right.
And I'm not even holding it against him that he was cheating on his wife, as bad as that is.
Right.
I'm talking about something that rose to the level. I mean, remember back in 2003 how gripping that whole story was. I
Sure.
mean, it was, Kobe flying back and forth from Colorado from LA to Colorado and back and forth.
Yeah.
And there were questions about, is he going to go away for life? And he had assembled the best team that money could buy to defend him. So
Right.
they were all ready to go to court on this. I mean, it was going to go to trial. And, the woman said, I can't do this. I can't, get in front of a court and do it. So the fact that there's a confidential settlement, we'll never hear about it again publicly because she can't talk about it.
Now, here's what I'll say, looking back on that, I'm not condoning that in any way, shape, or form, never would, okay? But he was not charged. His wife stayed with him, okay? I know he bought her a big ring, ring and everything like that, but his wife, Vanessa, stayed with him. They ended up having 4 daughters. Unfortunately, now they only have 3, and Kobe's, no longer with us either. From that point forward, I don't know if that was the eye-opener, if it was the wake-up call for him. I don't think, other than his feud with Shaq, you really never heard anything negative about Kobe from that point forward. I don't know if he made amends or what it was, or if it changed him. Obviously, he wasn't a perfect human being. None of us are. We all make mistakes, some bigger than others.
I do too.
That was a mistake, right? However it went down. But, from that point forward, it seemed like he was a better individual. And everything I've heard about him as a father to his 4 daughters,
100%.
as well, with LeBron, with his kids, and D Wade with his kids battling for custody and all that, nothing but good things about him as a father and as a husband from that point forward. So you're right. You can't forget that. It's part of who he was. It was a big mistake. But from that point forward, if you move on, the career was remarkable. The achievements were remarkable. As an individual, everything that's coming out now, from Jimmy Fallon to Jimmy Kimmel to Ellen to Shaq tonight in tears telling stories and everything, it's all positive stuff about Kobe. And you're hearing things about him going to hospitals through the back door, riding in a limo of a kid who had cancer in Arizona, whose first name was Kobe, who just wanted an autograph. And Kobe decided to go there and meet the kid. And then 2 weeks later, the kid passes away. And at the time, Kobe's asking the doctors, what can we do for him? I'll pay for everything. Don't worry about the cost of whatever it takes to get this kid better. And they said, there's really nothing you can do. And so those stories are coming out now, and things that we didn't know, that there were no PR people allowed, around that. And none of the other doctors or anybody was told about that. And he did those things, I guess, on numerous occasions. So while there was the incident in Denver, you're right, there are a lot of good things that are coming out about what he did once he became the basketball icon that he became, wearing 8 and 24 for the Lakers and leading them to 5 titles.
Yeah, and that's why, I've been hesitant I'm just simply telling you, and I did mention it to my listeners on TAM the other night, my personal view of Kobe is clouded by what happened in 2003. It doesn't mean that everybody else has to think that.
Right.
It was just something that prevented me from 100% love and embracing of the guy. But you're absolutely right that on balance, unbelievable. First of all, I mean, just as a player, he was an all-time great, but everything else that he was doing and his post basketball career was flourishing. He was an Oscar winner. He had all these projects and the Mamba Academy, and the family was doing great. And, Gigi, it just breaks your heart that, she perished with him. And, Vanessa, the wife, and the rest, and the other children, I can't even fathom the level of tragedy. And, I mean, Kobe Bryant it's not going to be a loss that will be gotten over anytime soon. As we said, Jerry West said he doesn't think he'll ever get over it. Nor should you, when you have a guy with the global reach that Kobe had, cut down in the prime of his life, not his athletic life, because he was done with basketball, but cut down in the prime of his life, just getting rolling on coaching his daughter and just getting rolling on being essentially a spokesperson for women's basketball, among many other projects. So I certainly understand where the world is grieving. And LA, I mean, no Lakers Clippers game tonight. I did find it interesting, RoadMan, that Shaq said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I hear this incorrectly, but somebody was saying that Shaq said tonight that he hadn't spoken to Kobe since 2016.
Yeah, and he was in tears tonight and apologized for it, and said that.
And yet his son had one of the last exchanges with Kobe Kobe's life.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a love-hate relationship. Because of two alpha males and the egos that were at stake. Was it Kobe's team or was it Shaq's team? Well, the Bust family decided it was Kobe's team, right? And they parted with Shaq, and so that obviously is something that Shaq regrets now, not having spoken to Kobe since he scored 60. It was the last game of his career. He said the last time he talked to him, that was it. He told him to go get 50, and Kobe scored 60.
And by the way, RoadMan, I really appreciate that Shaq did that, because so many people, in the wake of a famous person's death, they want to make it about them. They want to say, you know what, Kobe was, hanging with me. And, I've heard stories about people who claim that Kobe talked to him for an hour in a hallway in some obscure gym. I mean, maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. But here's the point. If Shaq wanted to, now that Kobe has passed, he could have said, hey, Kobe and I talked recently, and we had a heart-to-heart on the phone, and we patched things up. He could have created an entire narrative that he and Kobe were all good, and and who was going to challenge him? There was nobody to challenge him, especially as long as it was a phone call, as opposed to like an email or a text where okay, Shaq, you said you spoke to him via email or text. Where are they? All he has to do is say, yeah, Kobe and I had a 3-hour phone conversation 6 months ago, and nobody would know any better for it. So I appreciate Shaq being so damn honest, when it would have been easy for him to embellish and lie a little bit and create a narrative like, oh, you know what? These two alpha males, after all, they did get together and they did, toast each other,
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to see the impact that he had, not just in Los Angeles or in the United States, throughout the world, though. All the tributes with the purple and yellow lights. I think I saw it in China, and you saw it in Cleveland, the Terminal Tower, and everywhere. And like I said, with the talk show hosts and all that they did and everything like that. It just doesn't seem real. You know what I mean? That's what my son and I kept saying. This just doesn't seem real. It doesn't. Did this really happen? And I read a story today where Kobe and his wife agreed to never travel in the same helicopter. Did you see that, DMan? Just in case something might have happened. I read a story today about that, and unfortunately, it did happen, and even more so, his daughter, a 13-year-old daughter who loved basketball, was with her dad on her way to a basketball game. So just very sad the way it went down. I was talking with Chase, our executive producer on the Press Play Podcast Networks, about this before. The last, for me, for a lot of people and a lot of kids, this is their first athletic death tragedy. You know what I mean? I go back to December 31st, 1972, growing up in Pittsburgh, when Roberto Clemente was killed in a plane crash, trying to help the earthquake victims in Nicaragua. He was 38. Kobe's 41. When my son told me this, that's the first thing that popped into my head. I mean, same thing. You mentioned plane crashes and all that. Clemente's remains were never found, right? Today, I guess they were able to find all 9 bodies and that were involved in this crash. But that's what I thought back to. My partner, JT, WHBC Radio in Canton, they had the Thurman Munson plane crash. People in Canton, that registers with them. So this, unfortunately, for this generation, the current players in the NBA who idolize them, the kids and everything like this is their moment that I had, that others had, similar to this, I guess, from a tragic standpoint.
Yeah, RoadMan, and let me say this. I did mention the names on my radio show the other day, but I want to make sure I do it on the pod out of respect.
Sure.
It was Kobe Bryant and of course his daughter, Gianna, Gigi, but you had the Altobelli family, basically, John, Carrie, and Alyssa, the daughter. And Alyssa was a teammate of Gianna, and so they perished. Christina Mauser, an assistant basketball coach in Orange County, she died. Bryant asked Mauser to teach his team defense, so she was on the chopper. Sarah and Peyton Chester, the mother, and another 13-year-old daughter, Peyton. So they were on it, and the pilot was Ara Zobayan. So, it's easy to gloss over
the
names of the others who died. It's understandable because of Kobe's megawatt personality and megawatt impact. But it is important to remember that these other families were torn apart. And, the fact that you lost, was it 1, 2, 3 13-year-old children,
right?
In addition to the, among the 9 dead makes it that much more devastating. Not that anybody's death is not devastating, but 3 13-year-olds in a chopper, it's just sad that,
wow.
It's really unfortunate that they decided to go. But again, that's retrospect. I mean, if the pilot can somehow get over the fog deck and acclimate himself with the freeway on his way to the Mamba Academy, we're not talking about second guessing. But when it happens like that, you see how bad the conditions were, and it's virtually zero visibility, and the fact that the police choppers had been grounded at that time, you have no choice but to say this was avoidable. You know what I mean? It's not like a meteor coming down and hitting a certain portion of the earth. That's another tragic element to it.
Yeah, I talked about that with my son today. If this were Kobe and the pilot and they wanted to, take those chances, okay. But you had children and other people on board that, helicopter in those conditions. And, we're waiting to find out what caused the crash. Was it the conditions? Should they not have been flying? Was it something that malfunctioned, with the helicopter? What led to this crash? And, maybe we'll get answers to it. Maybe we won't. But it doesn't, bring them back. And that's the sad thing in all of this. And, we saw all the tributes, the teams, the 24-second violation, the 8,
I thought that was pretty impressive. I mean, in the wake of the tragedy, that whoever thought of that 24-second run out was a really, really, touching tribute.
We were talking about this. What other ways could the NBA honor him if they wanted to, right? How could the Lakers? I'll start with the Lakers. The Lakers, I'm not sure when they're playing their first game. The game tonight was canceled. I think their next game is scheduled for Friday. I think it would be kind of cool. He's the only Laker to have 2 numbers retired, right? 24 and number 8 that hang in the rafters. I think it would be kind of cool if the Lakers in the first half of their first home game came out and all wore number 24. And then in the second half, they came out and they all wore number 8. I think that would be a nice tribute from a Lakers standpoint. And then to take it a step further, since he was an 18-time All-Star, if they wanted to do something to honor him during the All-Star game, one Team LeBron wears all number 24 and Team Giannis wears all number 8, and they pay tribute to him that way. I just, trying to think of ways you could do something to honor him. that would be appreciated by the basketball community.
I think that's going to happen. I think the All-Star game is going to happen where one team's going to be 8 and the other's going to be 24. I would bet, whatever I have on that. But yeah, I mean, it's I can't get past Jerry West. I mean, a guy of Jerry West's accomplishments of his age, a guy who's been around forever. It was as if his son, and it was essentially his son, his adopted son, had been killed. And he said the only thing that compared to this was the death of his brother in Korea. And you watch Jerry West 2 days removed, and he still can't speak because he's crying so much.
Right.
So it's obviously devastating, as we said, for not just the basketball community, but the sports world and the world in general. And my heart bleeds for the Bryant family, for Vanessa and her children.
And I agree 100% with you. And thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who perished in that helicopter crash and the families of those involved as well. All right, D-Man, we're going to come to an end of this Next Man Up podcast. We're going to do this again sometime soon because we got to talk some Cavs because they stink right now. And we'll see if they make trades before the February 6th trading deadline. Maybe we'll get something on before then. And we got to talk Indians right now because the Twins and the White Sox are loading up and the Indians are standing pat. So the next time we get together, we'll get into that, maybe some NFL draft talk. Sound good?
You got it, RoadMan. Happy birthday, buddy.
Thanks
by the way, as we've wrapped this, you're on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm 56 years old and a day. It's already moved on to the 29th of January. Thanks so much, D-Man. That brings us to an end of this Next Man Up podcast. Stay tuned for more of these coming your way here in the near future.